Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance is traveling today, so it's the Bob and Katie show, or the Katie and Bob show. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me.
We have a lot of news. Number one, right off the top, does the Washington Prime Group bankruptcy directly affect you? This is the largest small owner in the country, over $100 million. And they announced yesterday. Katie, what do you have more stats on how much property they control, or?
Yeah, so that's about they're based in Columbus, and they have about 103 shopping centers total.
Yeah.
Their listed assets for this particular bankruptcy, they listed $4.03 billion. And debts of about 3.47 billion. So they have kind of worked out a little bit with that, but there is a huge concern with these malls, in that there's a lot of retail that relies on these places, and the retail struggling as well with the pandemic. A lot of malls had to close or had very strict restrictions, so that did really affect retail as well. And I think that's probably a major reason why this particular group was so deeply affected, is you look at their rent revenue that they were earning from these retail locations, and it fell from $633 million in 2019 to $506 million in 2020. And they don't have 2021 numbers yet, but I'm sure it continued to fall slightly early 2021 as well.
Yeah, I misspoke when I said the $100 million. That was a decline in revenues. Obviously, this is billions and billion dollars of debt. The primary reason they did this is to restructure the debt they plan on operating. But for those of you, everyone said, I think 2/3 said no, and a number said they don't know. I will say it will affect everyone, if not directly, at least indirectly. The problem that you have, and we're going to go to that slide later, is you have these core tenants that attracts the consumer to walk into the mall and helps everyone else. And obviously around the mall, there's other businesses as well. Which brings us to our second poll question: should you update your credit policy to evaluate location? I can go with either one. I would have no problem answering no, with the answer is that is something you should be doing already. But specifically for SBA, I think I would put a sentence in there that your institution is aware of this, is that is something you're going to consider. You certainly don't want to be lending to a place in a zombie mall. Katie, I know you're from California. I don't know if you've been following California news. In California, they just passed a law, the legislature, that makes it a lot easier to rezone commercial property for residential. So the theory is that you get a bulldozer and some demolition dynamite, blow these things up and build new housing. So again, just because in California yesterday we could discard the mask most of the time. We are certainly not over this, and now we're going to start dealing with a lot of the fallout. Katie, I asked you to do this, and this is interesting. You put together a list of the 14 retailers that filed bankruptcy during the pandemic. I wouldn't have been able to name all these. Go ahead, Joseph, can you pop that slide a little bit larger? Or anyway, obviously the big names on here: JCPenney, Neiman Marcus. Anything stand out for you, Katie, on this?
Yeah, well, I was just looking at the list. I really couldn't have made a list like this on my own. There were some of these that I just simply didn't realize they were struggling, but they really are a drawing source for a lot of malls, and that's definitely a concern. I know when JCPenney went out in our mall, this was several years ago, that really did change who was being drawn to the mall. changed a little bit with the walkability for some of these locations. So it was a concern definitely for a lot of businesses in that area. And you saw a vast change in how the malls operated and things like that. Just looking at who's coming in and who's going to be walking past the stores and things like that.
Yeah.
So those are things, of course, a lot of these are going to be sticking around and restructuring and things like that.
Well, when we say restructuring, that means the bank's going to take a big time haircut and take a loss.
Right,
So
right.
the fallout is going to be falling on the institutions. Katie, just so you know, I never heard of Belk. We found out what they're in the Southeast department store.
Yeah, yeah.
And Century 21 is a retailer up in New England area. See, any Southern Cal, Pier 1, I don't know if you had those. Pier 1's a pretty cool spot. I know they started in Southern California, but they had a lot of knickknacks, and that was, of course, Steinmart is interesting in that they got a $10 million PPP loan, and they filed bankruptcy a week later in the PPP draw 1. So we're following that one. That was be interesting to see what happens on that one. So the answer is, if you're going into a mall location, find out who the anchors are, find out how they're doing. And for example, as Katie said, a number of these will be staying open, but I know, for example, Steinmart just closed the doors, just absolutely closed the doors. Katie, this has been under the radar this week, but I want to talk about this. First of all, we asked the question, has the RRF rescission directly affected your borrowers? Set this up for just a little bit, then we'll go into more in depth. What are we talking about when we ask this question?
Yeah, so if you haven't heard about it already, last Friday, the SBA had to make an announcement that they had to rescind about close to 3,000 restaurant revitalization fund awards, in part due to 2 different cases, one in Texas, one in Tennessee, where judges issued injunctions due to how these were structured. And if you remember correctly, the first period of these awards were going specifically to businesses owned by women, veterans, or socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And in those particular cases, they found that was not okay. So in this situation, the SBA regretfully says they had to rescind those.
Wow, 16%, it's a little bit higher than I thought on that. Let's talk about this, Katie. You set it up very well. What SBA is saying, hey, we have to follow the judges. The judges ruled the injunctions. What's the next step? What's going to happen next, do you think?
So I of course was not part of they had a webinar for these people who this affected, and I was not informed of it, so I was not able to watch. But from my understanding, they will be able to reapply later. It's just at this point, that breakout that was for the veterans and women and socially disadvantaged individuals, that breakout group is not going to be able to be prioritized temporarily. So I know they're adjusting it. It doesn't look like they've updated the website to reflect that yet, but hopefully they'll get this back up and running. And they've had a lot of problems with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program and the whole. If I remember correctly, this is also the one that had trouble with their system not processing the applications as well properly. So hopefully they'll get this back up and running. I know a lot of businesses needed this money, and then they can start actually awarding it, and people can use it for what they need to.
Yeah, and you're an entrepreneur, you're running restaurants, been waiting for a year, you finally get the notice, hey, you're approved, you're going to get your money, then bam, it's in the small print there. I don't know if we have it on a separate slide, but this is from SBA's notice. It said, we will not be able to disperse your Restaurant Revitalization Fund Award. Great, thanks. Of course, they're punting to the courts, and they're challenging, they're challenging that priority application period. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, and I don't know more than details on that. but they can't fund those 3,000 prior applicants until they do some sort of remedy. Obviously, I'm sure they're high in this, but that's, I'm not going to argue right or wrong. What I'm arguing is you got 3,000 restaurant owners who are employing a lot of people who aren't getting their money, and that's the tragedy in the situation. Again, I said banks seem to do pretty well, and I'm funding those billions of PPP loan dollars. It's too bad the banks weren't involved in terms of the infrastructure of delivering this program as well. Katie, another story that's caught our eye and which is interesting is that there's some are arguing do not get your PPP loan forgiven, keep it as a loan, and therefore you didn't get that grant, and then go and get more money through the employee retention tax credit. Who's arguing that, and what are the issues?
Yeah, so you're seeing this pop up. A lot of mainstream media is covering this now. There's been several quotes from various people saying that this is an option available to some people, and it definitely would be an option for a few people. I don't know if it's the best practice necessarily for the majority, and it's definitely going to probably get your borrowers concerned about this, because they're hearing don't apply, and then from the lenders they're hearing to go ahead and apply. So that's going to create some confusion. It's something to be aware of, definitely if you have a borrower coming to you about this issue. The thing with the employee retention tax credit is it originally was not going to be something that PPP borrowers were even going to be eligible for. But back in December, when a lot of the laws passed and a lot of things changed, that did get adjusted. So if you have a borrower who applied for a PPP loan, they can still get employee retention credit. However, that can't be used on the same things that they're getting forgiveness for. So that's where the problem comes about. Do you apply for forgiveness, or do you get the credit? In some cases, the credit will be better. Not too many cases, but in 2020, you could get up to $5,000 per worker annually. So I imagine that's not going to be a very attractive situation for most borrowers, unless they really didn't take a lot of money for that. For 2021, that more than doubled, and you've got a great option there. It's $28,000 per employee annually. That might be a little bit more attractive for some borrowers, especially if they are in that group that took $50,000 or less, or around there. This might actually be a better deal, and then they can turn around and pay off their loan and maybe get a little extra money out of it in the process. So that could be an option for them. Finally, if you started a business after February 15, 2020, which I believe most of them will not have been eligible for PPP, they're allowed a tax credit up to $50,000 per worker per quarter. So that's a much more attractive situation, but most of them are not going to have a PPP loan.
Where do they go? I'm a lender and I have a borrower who's thought about this, is considering it. Where should the borrower go? Are there resources? Who's pushing this? Is there a website? I mean, is this...
Not any particular website. If you just kind of Google search it, I found a lot of different resources that they can go over, and they're going to find the same sort of information that I did. Again, it's going to really depend on their situation. If they have a PPP loan and it's looking like it's going to be fully forgiven, in most situations, getting that forgiveness is going to be better for them. But if they're in a specific situation, say they're part of a controlled group and one of the members did not get forgiveness on PPP loan, didn't get a PPP loan at all, maybe they could get the ERC then. Same thing, you've got if they didn't use all of their PPP loan on qualified wages, you might be able to work it out that way. This is going to be a little bit more complicated, and they're probably going to want to get somebody to really, who knows finances and knows taxes, who could really help them with this. It's not going to be something that every employer is just going to be able to easily work out and do on their own.
Well, let's start with the easy stuff. Where do they go? Is for this credit, to apply for the credit? Where do they go?
It's part of a tax credit. So it's going to be with that particular thing. And if they have someone that handles taxes, that's probably their best bet to go reach out to whoever handles their taxes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. And obviously we will follow this story as well. So interesting wrinkles. Just when you thought it was safe to get back in the water, the PPP, non-PPP waters, bam. So life continues to be interesting. Hey, Jeff asked the question. I don't have a good answer. I don't know if Katie does. Jeff, we may punt on this. Do PPP loan docs need to be modified? Obviously, we need some type of documentation. I don't think we're touching the original note. But let me, Jeff, I'm going to defer this over to Lance tomorrow, and I'm going to let him answer that as well. And we appreciate you supporting the PPP group. Again, we've migrated the PPP answer desk to Jennifer's SBA Lenders Connect group, and she has a lot of cool stuff on that apps and for her upcoming conferences and everything else. So good for her. And Lance is flying out. He's updating the closer training. We're excited about that. Well, Lance is always excited to get to California. Joseph, what's the weather going to be like for him tomorrow? Is he going to be okay?
72 and sunny. Yep.
Well, the plan is for Lance to film tomorrow and Friday. We'll see. We'll see if we may be on the beach filming, so we may be a true remote. These are our upcoming webinars. We're going to be doing one on the 1050 now with the emphasis on SBA on that in a couple of weeks. Next week we're going to do projections, cash flow. Again, the situation that SBA is highlighting in terms of review. So let's see, if a PPP borrower immediately wired the vast majority of funds to an affiliate, should be referred to the OIG. That's, the answer is not immediately, but if that affiliate is using those funds to make payroll, you're fine. So I think it's just a use of proceeds back to the 1050, Russell. I would find out, does that person control it? Are they using those funds as intended? If not, yeah, I'd make the call. But I know there's a number of companies that they will wire funds to a third party or to another company that handles the payroll. So as long as they have that, then I think you're fine. Good question. Good question, Russell. So that's what we have coming, and I think that's it. Katie, good job. We will be talking to you on the road tomorrow from Marina Del Rey. Except Katie's not. Katie's going to be talking to us from Seattle. So anyway, thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.